friend, my name is John Stambaugh. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I have a lot of new subscribers lately. I passed the 1,000 mark, which is pretty cool, and I would love to get to know some of you, and I would love for you to get to know me. So I think I'm gonna do a 1K Q&A because it sounds fun, and yeah, I would love for this to be a more personal space than just for you to come watch one helpful video. I hope it helps, and then to disappear, you know? So introduce yourself down in the comments below and leave me a question, something you'd like to have me answer in a Q&A, whether it's personal or if it's about camera gear. I am making this video to talk to you about the Fuji XT30 on its last day with me, how to set it up for video recording and how to optimize it, because this thing is a little beast and I love it so much, but I'm getting rid of it because I got the XT4 that I am working on a review for right now. So if you're watching this and the review hasn't come out yet, it will be soon. I just really want to put it through its paces. So this video is going to be all about optimizing this little beast for video. So I'm going to walk you through a few menu settings and how I set up specific functions on this camera, and then also specific ways that I work around the limitations. In this video, I'm going to highlight a philosophy that I think is really important when you approach working with any camera that is on the budget side, but really any camera in general. And this might sound like dumb advice, but it's really, really helpful, especially when you want to get the best out of your camera. And that is avoid its weaknesses, or know your weaknesses far better than strengths. So this camera has a lot of weaknesses. I made a note. There is no 10-bit internal recording. There is not great low light performance. There is no IBIS. There is overheating and very short record times. 10 minutes is the maximum on this camera. The ergonomics are not very good because it's so small. The battery life, not great. The mic jack is smaller than a standard mic jack. It's a 2.5 millimeter mic jack. The screen is just okay. It doesn't swivel, it just tilts, and the screen is like moderately bright for daytime, and there's only one card slot for recording. So here's the thing. If you want to make great videos with this camera, and I really think I have made great videos with this camera, I'm not trying to boast, I just think I have embraced all of those weaknesses and chosen to emphasize the strengths. And that is the philosophy that you have to know when you approach working with this camera. So some of its greatest strengths, on the other hand, are the fact that the colors are insane. Fuji makes beautiful colors. So get to know these colors really, really well, because the 8-bit codec is impressive and it can shoot up to 200 megabits per second. So the 100 megabit per second limit that a lot of other camera manufacturers have doesn't apply to this tiny little 8-bit beast. So that is one big strength of it. It has an APS-C size sensor packed into this tiny, tiny little body. So you could go with a GH5 and skip all the recording limits, but you would maybe have to use a speed booster just because the Micro Four Thirds size. And also, speaking of Panasonic, the autofocus on this little camera is amazing. This is some of Fuji's most recent autofocus. I think only the XT4 is newer than the XT30's autofocusing system. So play that to your advantage. The autofocus is insane. It also has 4K, is downsampled from 6K, and that's been around for a little while, but I can tell you that this 4K file is gorgeous. I love working with this 4K file, and I have worked with a lot of different 4K, and they're not all equal. And this one puts out a really beautiful 4K image. The 120 frames per second, the 120 FPS, it doesn't have audio, but it is beautiful. I have blended it with the 4K footage, and I can't tell more often than not. It is so sharp, it's not soft, and you don't lose the autofocus, and so it works really well. I love the 120 on this camera, even though it's only 1080. And then the small size is a detriment for sure, because ergonomics are not very good. But you can take this camera so many places and no one will ask any questions. And honestly, it's just so light that you could shoot on this thing all day and never be worried about like getting exhausted or having to set it down and missing a moment and things like that, this is just a great little camera because you just can always carry it around and it's so light. And then also it's just super easy to use and it's really fun to use. And that's the worst part of every Fuji review. If you've watched different Fuji reviews, I apologize on behalf of the Fuji community because there's just no way to tell you unless you own a Fuji camera how fun it is to shoot on one. So this is super fun to use and it doesn't miss out on that. And then the continuous external power solves the battery life via USB-C. The 10-bit 422 external recording through the HDMI jack. So if you buy a Ninja 5, you can record externally. And then you can make use of the F-Log. I probably wouldn't tell you to use the F-Log with the 8-bit internal recording. You can, and I think you'll like it better than probably S-Log or maybe C-Log on an 8-bit file because F-Log is pretty great, but I would tell you to wait until you're shooting 10-bit 422 on a Ninja 5, which is only about $750. If you spend $750, you can get a little camera that shoots 10-bit 422 by just upgrading. And also then you get dual recording. So if you're worried as a wedding shooter that you only have one SD card down here on the bottom plate, then add the Ninja 5 and now you have 2 recordings. And the last one is a silly one, but I thought it was worth putting on here. The auto exposure on this camera is actually usable. Like if you're vlogging and you just want to walk out and about, it does step. The exposure is stepped, so it incrementally changes. But a lot of other camera manufacturers, I just don't trust to get auto exposure right. I just usually think it doesn't look very good. But Fuji nails it. I don't know if it's because they're colors or if they made this camera really smart with exposure, but the auto exposure is actually really good. So, okay, now you know the weaknesses and the strengths of this camera. Now I can show you how I've set it up, because I think once you get that philosophy down, when you see how I've set it up, it's going to make a lot of sense. And if you will approach this camera and really every other camera that you shoot on in that way, I really think you're gonna make better videos and you're gonna be happier with the cameras that you're working with. Because if you approach this camera and want it to be a red cinema camera or even a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, which this shoots 4K, so shouldn't it be the same quality? No, this is not a cinema camera. It is not trying to compete with the Pocket 4K. And so don't expect this camera to be anything that it's not, and just approach it for its weaknesses. Whenever you buy any camera and whenever you approach a camera working with one, think about its weaknesses and avoid them. So if you get to know your camera, you'll get to know its weaknesses, and that's a huge piece of advice. But now I'm going to show you how to set it up, so let's cut to that.
Okay, so first things first, when I boot it up, let's just go into the menu and look at the My Menu options. So inside of the My Menu, which you can go and set up right here inside of User Settings, My Menu, that's where you do this. And I just went through all of the video options and I added as I chose, and I'm going to show you that. So in the My Menu, which is the first option when you click Menu, I added the movie mode, so I can go in, I can change my frame rate really quickly, and I can switch back and forth on my different bitrate options and my resolutions. So that happens this fast. Right there, I'm ready to go. And then I put noise reduction on here because the noise reduction works pretty well actually. It does help because this camera doesn't have impressive low light. And so if you're shooting in a lower light scenario and you're shooting in 4K, you might as well turn it on because it actually is pretty good, and it's not worth doing it in post because it's actually pretty equivalent in my opinion, unless you have some really nice software. So then I put my audio settings in here because here you can control all of your different audio settings for your mic level adjustments and whatnot. And then F-Log, which I don't use very often. I used to have the Ninja 5 and I would use it then, but not so much anymore. And then your AF custom settings. And I just put that in there because right when you get the camera, you tweak around with them quite a bit, and I just like to have it quick access. And you know, sometimes I'll go in there and just fiddle with it a little bit to try and tune up the focus for different scenarios. And then the tally light, I keep it on front and rear because I just always like to know when I'm recording. But now, more importantly, let's go through the function buttons. And so the function buttons on mine, I think first what we should do is go through my swiping functions. And you can assign these inside of the wrench icon. And if you go to button and dial settings, I can't remember exactly where it is, but oh, the touchscreen settings. Yeah, there it is. So you turn it on here, and then you go and you set your function settings in here. And I guess I can just show you really quickly the way that I set these up. I have my Wi-Fi on one, my white balance, my film simulation, my mic controls is on another one, so I have it in the My menu and here. And then I have my slow-mo, my high speed. I have my white balance lock, which is a huge key feature to my setup. I have on face AF, and I have on focus zoom, and then I have on the Q dial. And quite honestly, I don't even have to use the Q dial because of how I have the camera set up. So let me go through and just show you really quick. So if I use this, you'll see this little blue light turn on. I'm locking the auto white balance. So I pretty much always have the white balance on auto. And that's just a swipe up. And I have it on auto almost all the time, but that's because I use this auto white balance lock quite a bit, and it's so key. And then this is face detection, which I turn on and off, you know, quite often depending on my scenario that I'm in. And then swiping over is my film simulation, which I always use classic Chrome. Go check out that video. And then swiping down, I just have to swipe down twice and I'm shooting in 120. So swipe down, and I'm ready to shoot in 120 frames. So that's how quick that is. And then if I want to turn it off, I just swipe up, swipe down, then swipe up. And swiping over is my mic level adjustments, which I also have in the My menu. And then my Q button, I don't really have set up because I don't use it that often. So I left it on default. This is noise reduction, and this is dynamic range, which I use, but I always keep those where they are, and I rarely change the screen brightness. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then right here on my top deck, I use the function button for Wi-Fi, and then I use the dials for my shutter speed and my ISO, and the punch in button. Let's see, it doesn't work unless you're in manual mode, and then you have the punch in button right here on this shutter speed dial. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how I have my camera set up.
All right, that is it for setting up the Fuji XT30. There's a few more things that you could do. You could go in and customize, but really that right there keeps it fast and light for me, so that when I'm shooting, I don't even have to blink, and I know exactly what I want to change and how I want to change it. And I just make sure that I know my camera in and out, and especially its weaknesses. So that's it for this video. I know that it was mostly just talking about camera philosophy and then barely showing you how to set it up, but I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that if you buy the XT30 that you love it as much as I do. And please, as always, leave me a comment below. Ask any questions that you might have. Let me know if this was helpful for you, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.